Hi, my name is Yvonne Jegede. The title of our paper is Reviving Fine Details in Historical Photographs using AESRGAN, an AI framework for digital heritage. My co-authors for this paper are Temitope D. Jegede, Atef Mohamed Shalan, PhD. Now let's get into it. Why this research? Why are we doing this? This research seeks to address the challenge of preserving historical photographs, which we consider key components of our cultural memory. However, we do know that many archival materials from the 19th and early 20th centuries are degraded due to environmental exposure and analog limitations. There are traditional methods for trying to enhance these photographs, but often they are oversmoothed and the results, look like they obscure historical details because they don't just offer us that fine semantic details. It's a fact that there are now deep learning and image super resolutions that are powerful tools for restoration while maintaining semantic integrity. One of the reasons for this research is to establish a robust, interpretable, and ethically aligned framework for digital heritage preservation through attention-guided super resolution. Now let's look at the objectives of this research. We want to be able to design and implement an AESR-based pipeline for historical photograph restoration. We want to be able to enhance restoration accuracy and perceptual realism by incorporating attention mechanisms that prioritize semantically significant regions such as faces, inscriptions, and fine textures over less critical areas. In addition to that, we want to be able to establish a reproducible deep learning pipeline for digital heritage and then evaluate using PSNR and frequency spectrum analysis. Moving on, we look at some literature, existing literature. For our literature review, the context we should remember is that digitalization actually preserves heritage, but traditional methods fail to restore these fine details that actually contain history. So we actually do begin by recognizing the critical role of digitization in preserving historical and cultural heritage. But just scanning preserves the existence of those images. Like I said, these traditional methods fail to recover fine structural details, and in that way, some part of history is lost. Over the past decade, deep learning models such as SRCNN, AESRGAN have significantly improved visual realism. In fact, this AESRGAN that we're talking about here comes from a long lineage of GANs such as the SRGAN, the ESRGAN, the real SRGAN, and here we are talking about AESRGAN. Let me just say quickly that the SRGAN introduced perceptual realism and the ESRGAN improved texture recovery by using the RRDB blocks, and then the real ESRGAN added robustness for real-world regenerations, and AESRGAN integrates attention for semantic focus. Of course, there are gaps in literature. Some of these gaps include limited application of attention-guided GANs to historical photographs, lack of explainable frameworks, and limited availability of diverse and high-resolution historical dataset. Let's go into the methodology. What are the tools that we used? And we'll talk about data acquisition all the way down to the actual project workflow. So we used the Google Colab Pro, and we ran on NVIDIA A100 GPU. We made use of the dependencies such as PyTorch, Basic SR for super resolution activities. We actually selected over 600 images from about 2,000 images altogether. These 2,000 images were sourced from LOC, that is the Library of Congress, Met Museum, as well as Wikimedia Commons. This was what we used for training. Here we have like the project workflow, which is in a way generic. We'll get more into the details of what we did. So we also have like a visual of our data acquisition sources. Like I said, our study proposed a complete 5-stage AI-driven framework for this historical photograph enhancement. We moved from data synthesis to high fidelity output. The structured approach was rooted in real AESRGAN architecture, which ensures scalability and high perceptual quality. I'll not go into all the details, but here I want to mention that actually we made use of the 4 times bicubic downscaling, the Gaussian blur, and the JP compression in order to degrade the data. It was part of our methodology. In addition to that, there was the integration of attention model, the RRDBNet, which is the backbone of AESRGAN for selective modeling. The loss optimization that were used were L1 pixel loss, which was specifically for fidelity, perceptual loss, realism, and then the adversarial loss from the discriminator for visual indistinguishability, so that it's difficult to distinguish between the actual high resolution data and the one that was restored. In addition to that, for memory efficiency, what we did was to use a tiling strategy. That is, what we did was that for the data, we we made the effort to actually um, address the issue of the GP memory bottleneck by implementing this efficient tiling strategy. That is, processing the data in a 256 by 256 pixel patches, and then later on we stitch them together back again. So in terms of evaluation, we used the PS, NR, and frequency spectrum, particular 2D FFT. So the PSNR was to provide a pixel-wise benchmark for fidelity, while the frequency spectrum analysis via the 2D FFT, that was essentially for quantitatively proving the model's ability to recover lost high frequency texture and sharpness. Eventually, in the final stage was the restoration output generation. And our final deliverable, what this involved was that the final stage involved the seamless reassembling of these enhanced patches, which remember that I said we had to use a tiling strategy, into complete high fidelity historical photographs. So our methodology successfully delivered outputs that are not only quantitatively superior but also visually indistinguishable from real images. That is, meeting the highest criteria for digital historical preservation. What we have here, what is shown here, is the visualization of the synthetic data degradation parameters that were used. Now, it's getting interesting. We're going to be looking at the results that we have. So this slide illustrates the output quality difference between the low resolution input and the super resolved image generated by the AESRGAN. It's a comparative visualization. It highlights the enhancement that was achieved through our framework. On the left, you can see the degraded low resolution input, and on the right, we have the restored super resolution output. The AESRGAN model effectively reconstructs the high quality details such as the fabric texture, some of the facial contours, the architectural edges that were previously lost or blurred, if you would. So this improvement actually is from integrating the attention mechanism within the RRDB, that is the residual in residual dense block architecture of the real ESRGAN. This enables the model to selectively focus on salient image regions while suppressing noise. And we can go further to say that the incorporation of perpetual loss and adversarial optimization enhance the photorealism and texture fidelity, while at the same time maintaining the sharpness and the structural coherence of this photo. I'll just give a few seconds to look at this result, this remarkable result. We have some more results here. This slide actually shows us once again the difference between the low resolution input and the super resolved image produced by our AESRGAN model. Now, if we look at this very well, we're going to see that the model effectively reconstructs high frequency details such as fabric textures. We can see even inscriptions. If you look closely, you can begin to notice the texture of the apparel that the distinguished fellow is wearing. We can see even the ring on his finger looks more pronounced. I'm sorry, I think my little photo here is covering it a little bit. But yeah, these are some of the work that we did, that you can see what this model can do. We have another example here. Similarly, the low resolution on the left and the restored the super resolved output on the right, as produced by the AESRGAN. We can see that this is a grayscale photo of an antique chair. We can see the embroidered patterns becoming more obvious. We can see the fabric texture. We can see some carving on the wood. This again, we are attributing this to the attention enhanced RRDB architecture of our model. This is another interesting one that we look at. We can see the comparison once again. This marble statue, it actually displays sharper contrast you would see on the right, which has been improved now by the AESRGAN's ability to enhance details and depth and dimensionality in this restored historical imagery. Like I mentioned, we did evaluations. We used the PSNR, and we can see here what's happening. The PSNR is a standard metric used to quantify image reconstruction quality, particularly in contexts such as, you know, images that have some suppression or and all of that. So it measures the pixel-wise fidelity between the original high-resolution image and its reconstructed counterpart. So in essence, a higher PSNR value indicates better reconstruction quality. So PSNR values above 30 are generally considered to be high and acceptable for most visual tasks. So one might begin to say, oh, but it's just 1 dB, almost about 1 dB difference. But that may be so in terms of numbers, but in terms of the actual implication in improving and enhancing images, it's remarkable. We have another image here where we actually conducted the PSNR, this comparison that we have here. We see that this is almost 3, if I would say, over 2 anyway, dB, and we can see the 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 impression here that there has been an improvement in terms of um, the when you compare the original and the degraded um, image, as well as comparing the original as well and the restored image. So essentially what we are saying is that the restored profile closely approximates the original high resolution spectrum. Yeah, and so also we have the display of the frequency spectra of the different versions, and we can make this comparison. And we're all this is just to give us confidence that there's an improvement, and then we can prove it that we can see an impression. Altogether, these results demonstrate that AESRGAN not only enhances visual clarity but also reconstructs the underlying frequency structure of degraded images. This, we can say, confirms its robustness for heritage image restoration. Um, yeah. So what are our key findings? Our key findings are that this framework successfully restored fine details from degraded historical photographs. We saw that by the augmentation of the RRB net generator with the channel and spatial attention mechanisms, we're able to achieve higher and superior results. The we also saw that the PSNR validated our model's ability to recover fine details, and the Fourier transform that we did analysis also confirms recovery of high frequency in details and regions. So going forward, we can conclude by saying that AESRGAN does restore fine details while ensuring transparency. We have been able to demonstrate that attention-based super resolution can serve as a practical, explainable, and ethically aligned solution for digital heritage preservation. Its quantitative results have been supported by the PSNR and the frequency domain analysis. This validates our technical rigor, its technical rigor, I mean. Well, we can also say that we have laid a foundation for future studies to integrate interpretability, fairness, and multimodal restoration approaches. Yeah, this is a bridge, an AI, it bridges AI innovation with cultural preservation. We can say that through enhancing attention, we recover not just pixels, but actually history itself, because it's these fine details that make that difference. Now, what is our recommendation and what is the future direction? Obviously, we are going to talk about data. Data makes all the difference. We used about 600, over 600, images for this. We're going to suggest that further work should, go into thousands of images, different, whole different types of images. Um, that's a way to expand the work, to have some diversity in terms of the images. Also, our iteration was about 25,000. We're going to be suggesting at least train up to 50,000 iterations using contextual and style-aware perceptual losses, just to be able to enhance texture and realism and reduce artifacts. We're suggesting as well that GradCam, LRP, or attention map visualization should be integrated for interpretability and transparency. Finally, we will suggest that these steps, when taken, will help transition A-ESRGAN from a proof of concept into a scalable, transparent, and domain adaptive tool for digital preservation. This will actually help in broadening the framework's application to other archival media, which may include manuscripts and maps for broader preservation. I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.